You're listening to the Business Marketing Show, episode number 81. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com, on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Hello, this is Ed from the Business Marketing Show. Thank you for joining the podcast today. On the show, of course, is also the co-host, Mr. Brendan Tully. How are you, Brendan?
Oh, I'm good, Ed.
Fantastic. Yeah, can't complain. Lovely day in Perth. Hopefully it's a lovely day in Queensland. We do live in two very sunny places in Australia, so no complaints there. So I hope you, as the listener, is having a good day or afternoon or evening, wherever you may be. And today we are going to be talking about one of Brendan's favourite subjects, the speed of your website, or website speed, if you want to say it that way. Brendan gets very, very excited, and he has some very, very good systems and techniques he uses to make sure that your WordPress website is faster, and that's going to be the main type of platform we talk about.
You make me sound like such a nerd, Ed.
Well, that's because you're a lovely guy who is also a nerd.
Thanks, Ed. Really appreciate that.
Nothing wrong with nerd is a compliment in my book, mate. Absolutely. But if you're a nerd who can communicate, even better. So my job today is to keep Brendan from being too nerdy and talking too technical. So I'm going to filter out anything that Brendan says and pull him back into normal human speak if we get dangerously close to using too many acronyms or abbreviations, which the online world of websites and digital marketing and various things has. So Brendan, this is a subject that you and I have talked about many times, and you see this happening all the time. People spend a lot of money getting a website built, then they put it on typically a cheap hosting package, and then you go to have a look at that website and it takes like 15 seconds for the page to load, which is a poor visitor experience, and also you'll get penalised by the search engines, in particular Google, for slow loading pages. So I'm going to hand it over to you now to give us the rundown on the things you see that people need to do to improve, in particular, their WordPress website speed. Take her away.
All right, Ed. So I'm going to start off with a plug for our WP Speedfix business. So website speed is such an issue that we actually ended up creating a business that specifically focuses on fixing slow WordPress sites. That it just started as a blog post on our website, and more people started asking about getting their speed fixed. So speed is important. And there's a bit of an obsession online with website speed and going as fast as possible and all this sort of stuff. So there's kind of this perception that a faster website gets you more customers and gets you more visitors. So let's talk about that to start with. That's actually the wrong thinking. So most people think by being faster, they'll rank higher in Google and they'll get more customers. Now, once the website is loading reasonably fast, there's no more real gains to be had in the search results. You're not going to, typically, so long as the site loads in under 3 seconds, you're not really going to have a problem with ranking. So there's a bit of an obsession online with marketers and SEO people and agencies that if they get this website loading or a certain score in the Google PageSpeed Insights tester tool, they'll automatically rank at the top of Google. So that is incorrect. So I would just be clear that once you're at a certain, so speed is important. So once you're at a certain level, you're not going to rank any higher if it's any faster. So let's just move that aside for a second. What really, where speed really matters is for conversion. So a fast website won't get you more traffic and won't get you more customers, but a slow website will lose you customers and lose you traffic. So most people have their thinking around the wrong way. So you kind of, it's a subtle difference in thinking, but if you flip your thinking like that, you'll probably have a much better experience when you're thinking about website speed, doing stuff with website speed, thinking about hosting and things like that. So just want to be clear from the outset, like it isn't this kind of perception online that speed is a magic bullet and you get to there's always this perception that, hey, if I just have a YouTube video on my homepage, I'll rank at the top of Google and stuff like that. It doesn't work like that.
No, of course not. No, there are no magic bullets. So
yeah, that's all right.
But customer experience is an important thing. So if you're on a website and it's taking ages to load, well, the customer's going to leave, and you're not going to get any conversions, are you? So
yeah. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of speed testing tools out there. I would say that if the website feels slow to load, it is slow to load. Like, forget about what any speed testing tool says. The best tool for testing the website speed is your web browser, and is in particular your smartphone, because your smartphone will be more sensitive to speed because it has less processing power, and usually it has a slower internet connection, or it's loading over 3G or 4G. So I'd say if the site feels slow, you probably have a problem. If it feels like it's laggy and it's noticeably slow to load to the point that you're waiting for it, then once you're at that point, you probably have a problem, and you're probably losing visitors as a result, or losing customers as a result. Now, there's also a whole bunch of other tools on the internet for testing speed. The one we use is Pingdom. So the Pingdom speed tester at tools, tools.pingdom.com. That's probably the best real world speed tester tool. And what we're aiming for there is an ideal world. Now, it's not always possible. An ideal world is a load time at 1 second or below. So once you're at 1 second, it's this magical mark where the website feels like it loads instantly. So once you're under that 1 second mark, it will feel super snappy to load. Now, so there's a couple of things rolled into that. So let's talk about some of the other tools. GTmetrix is another popular speed test tool. In the last 18 months, they changed the way that they interpret website speed. So it is not a great reflection of the real world speed. Pingdom's a much more real world kind of speed test.
Yeah.
And also Google have a tool called PageSpeed Insights that gives you a speed score out of 100. Now, you'll find that a lot of people around the web are super obsessed with getting a 100 score on Google PageSpeed Insights, which is completely wrong, because PageSpeed Insights doesn't actually measure speed. It measures technical things against a checklist that is loosely correlated with speed, and it is actually possible to have 100 or a very high score on PageSpeed Insights, 90 to 100, and a super slow website. It's also possible to have a lightning fast website that loads in half a second and a really poor score on PageSpeed Insights. So we generally don't use PageSpeed Insights because it's not a great reflection of speed, and is actually missing a whole bunch of stuff that is speed related and super important on the modern web. Like, it's a tool that, it's working off stuff that is 5 or 8 years old. So, so that kind of be my starting point.
Which is unusual considering that it's coming from Google. You would think that it'd be cutting edge and on top of things. So why do you think that PageSpeed Insights is not up to scratch if it's coming from a company like Google?
Well, there's a couple of things. Most people don't understand speed. So a lot of the stuff that has to do with speed is under the bonnet in the site that PageSpeed Insights can't detect. For example, it can't detect the PHP version that you're running, which is super important. So PHP 7 is 2 to 3 times faster than the version before at 5.6, which equates to roughly a 30% faster website. So it can't detect PHP version, for example. So they can't tell you about that. They don't look at DNS hosting speed, which is a fundamental when it comes to website speed. I don't know why they don't look at it, but they don't look at a lot of things that are important. I just don't really have a good answer for that. Like their tool is more focused on the render speed of the website as opposed to the load speed. So, it ignores a lot of stuff. So
fair enough.
So we don't use it all. We use the Pingdom speed tester. So 1 second or below is where we want to be. Now, when we're looking at speed in the Pingdom speed tester tool, we break it down into 2. So we look at the stuff that loads off the website hosting, which we have total control over, or mostly total control over. And then we look at stuff that loads off third-party sites and servers, which we don't have a huge amount of control over. Things like remarketing code, analytics code, other marketing tracking codes. So generally, on really good quality hosting, so WP Engine, WPX hosting, Cloudways, and SiteGround. SiteGround's probably the minimum bar to entry there. You can get a site loading in 1 to 1.5 seconds without really that much speed optimization, so long as it doesn't have a huge number of remarketing codes and it's running a modern website theme. So,
right.
So I mean, step one, you need to be on good hosting. You're not going to have a fast website if you're on Bluehost or some other cheap $3 a month, $5 a month hosting. So,
Okay.
So I'd probably start there. Like it's the kind of classic thing that people are spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month on marketing, and then they spend $5 on their hosting, which is kind of the foundational layer of everything.
Crazy.
So I'd start there. Look at the hosting. You need to be on good hosting. That's kind of the minimum bar to entry. You're just not going to get a fast website on slow hosting.
Okay. All right. So what's next? So make sure you're hosting. Now, we probably, I think in the show notes, we should give a link to the stuff we talked about with hosting before, because we've done some podcasts in the past going into much more detail about the hosting side of it. So we'll put a link in the show notes for that, so you can go and listen to that one if you so desire.
Yep.
So assuming that they have good hosting and they've got that sorted, they're not using the cheapie, what's the next step?
Right. So the next part would be, so it's kind of related to hosting. So looking at DNS hosting speed. So if you if you break hosting down into four individual components. So email hosting, web hosting, the domain name, and then DNS hosting. So DNS hosting converts your www.domain.com into an IP address. The internet runs on IP addresses. So when you type an address into your web browser bar, your computer goes a DNS lookup and talks to the DNS hosting.
Yeah, like a phone number.
Yeah. So there's lots of different DNS hosting providers, and some are really slow. So some, it can take 1 or 2 seconds for it to go and look up that address. So that's 1 or 2 seconds before the website even tries to load. So if you're on bad hosting and you're using their DNS hosting, which is most often the case, then it will be really slow. So Cloudflare is who we use for DNS hosting. They are consistently the fastest DNS host in the world. So simply by switching to Cloudflare, you'll get a speed increase because of the DNS hosting bit. Cloudflare also is a content delivery network, which means they have over 100 data center locations worldwide. So what will happen is parts of the website will be stored on their servers, which are probably, in most cases, closer to the visitor. So the data is loading from a server closer, so it loads faster. And they do a bunch of acceleration things that generally make the website load faster. So I would almost always use Cloudflare for those reasons. So faster DNS hosting, has a content delivery network, has a bunch of website acceleration services, and the free plan is pretty much all you need in most cases. So for a small business website, the free plan will be fine. So really simple and will make a huge difference, particularly internationally. So generally speaking, the website will load at least half to 1 second slower, often more, in countries outside where it's hosted. So if you're hosted in Australia, but you serve an international audience, the website will generally be a second slower for those people. So using a content delivery network like Cloudflare puts some of the website, like the images and the files, closer to international visitors, so it loads faster for them.
Cool. Yeah, and that's good. And so we've been using Cloudflare for years now, and definitely agree it makes a huge difference. And considering that for the majority of people, the free version that they offer will do the job, how can you complain with that? It's free.
Yep, exactly. Now, the paid version is really good too. So $20 US a month for the paid version. Now, from a speed perspective, what that does, it does some smart image optimization stuff. So it will dynamically resize the images for devices. So if you're on a mobile device where the images will be smaller, it will resize them for that device. So it'll speed those up so there's less images to download. It also, there's an image format. So JPEG and PNG are typically the image files used on a website. So there is also a newer file format called WebP. that is dramatically, the file size is much, much smaller, but it's not all web browsers are WebP compatible. So you can't just change all your images on your site to WebP because it's not going to work on probably half the browsers in the market. So what the paid version of Cloudflare will do, it will look at what browser is visiting the site. And if that browser supports WebP images, it will serve WebP images instead. So they might
but you need to have both loaded to your site, correct?
No. You just have the normal images, so JPEG and PNGs, and
Cloudflare. Oh, I see. Okay, so Cloudflare will actually then provide the WebP image based off the JPEG or the whatever you've got on your site.
So it will intelligently detect what devices or browser is looking at the website and serve up the best image file format, the smallest image file format for that device. So in some cases that can be quite a reduction size. So a typical website might have 2 meg, 1.5 to 2 meg of images. So using these kind of technologies, you would drop that down typically to 0.5 meg to 1 meg. So it's a fairly substantial difference. So if your website's very visual or you're getting a lot of traffic where small increases or small tweaks like that, like small percent increases, they'll make a big difference if you have 100,000 visitors a month. So in those sort of cases, paying that $20 a month will make a difference to your bottom line and conversion rate.
Yeah, good one. Okay.
Sweet.
Next.
Use caching. So you really need to use caching with WordPress. So what the caching does, it pre-builds the pages before the visitor comes to the website. So instead of the visitor arriving at the website and then the CPU doing all the crunching and everything else to generate the page, what the cache does, it does all that in advance. So the page is ready to send to the web browser or the visitor visiting the site. So because WordPress relies on a database and it is quite intensive to build pages, particularly for like an e-commerce site like WooCommerce. If you don't have caching, it's going to go slow. So there's 2 caching plugins we generally recommend. So one is W3 Total Cache. That's the fastest one on the market, but it is very technical to configure. So if you don't know what you're doing, then I wouldn't recommend that. The next one we use is called WP Rocket. So WP Rocket is not as fast, but it's much more DIY friendly. So if you're not tech savvy, if you're kind of doing it yourself, I'd say use WP Rocket. It is paid, but it's not much. It's like $50 a year, or maybe it's $50 one-off or something. So it's not a huge amount, but it will make a big difference. So you definitely need caching. And sometimes for some hosts like WP Engine have caching built in already. So you don't need to use a caching plugin if your host already has caching.
Cool. So with the hosting that you provide, does that have caching or you need to use the plugins?
We set it all up so we migrate people on there and tweak it and do all the speed stuff as part of the migration process.
As part of it, okay, cool.
So we set up the caching and tune it and do all that sort of stuff.
Very good. So, right, what else have we got to go, Mr. Brendan?
Well, I've got a few other things. Okay, so switch to HTTPS, so encrypted mode.
Definitely,
use an SSL certificate instead of unencrypted, so HTTP. Now, the whole web is moving to encryption, so Google and other web browser software is going to start, well, in some cases has already started showing alerts. It'll say this page is not secure or whatever. If it has a form on there and it's not running in encrypted mode. So there might be a slight advantage, ranking advantage to switching to encrypted mode, but what the big advantage is it allows the web browser software to use a newer protocol to download the web page or talk to the web server. So there is the old protocol that a web browser software would use was version 1.1, HTTP version 1.1. So version 2 is the newer one and it's much faster, but the web browser software won't use it unless it's over an encrypted connection. So there's a benefit from a security perspective and maybe a rankings perspective to switching to HTTPS, but in my mind, the big advantage is speed. Like it's significantly faster using this newer protocol. So your host has to support the protocol. Not all hosts do, But unless you're running in HTTPS mode, it won't use that protocol anyway. So there's kind of two things there. So the host needs to support it. Now, if you use Cloudflare, it adds that support automatically. So that's another good reason to use Cloudflare. And most cheap hosts won't have support for that protocol, or old hosts, or if you've had your hosting account for a very long time and it's on an older server, it probably doesn't support that protocol. So adding Cloudflare will automatically add support for it, and then you just need to convert it across to HTTPS.
Yes, and I think that's pretty much, you shouldn't think about building a website without having that by default. It's really...
Yeah. I think so. And, today, like, encryption is just a note. You must have it. Like, you can't have login pages and be asking for customer information. Like, we have people we work with, clients we work with, taking financial information from people without the website's not encrypted, and that's just crazy. So,
yeah, get yourself in all sorts of trouble doing that.
Yep.
Alrighty. So, what's after the site encryption?
All right, got a couple more. So, we talked about before changing the version of PHP the site is using. So PHP 7 is the new version. It's about 2 years old. PHP 5.6 is the older version. So by changing your hosting to use the newer version, you'll get about a 30% speed increase.
And what is PHP?
It's the underlying programming language or programming framework that WordPress runs on. So it's the programming language WordPress was built in. It's a fairly simple switch. Your web host can do it, but the plugins and the theme you're using for your site need to be compatible with the newer version. So you need to check that first. There is a free plugin that WP Engine provide that you can use on any website that allows you to test test the compatibility before you make the change. So what we normally do is use that plugin, do the test. There might be some warnings that some of the plugins throw up, and then our guys will manually go and check those plugin sites to make sure that the plugin vendor or the theme vendor has said that, yes, it's PHP 7 compatible, and then it's simple to make the switch.
Cool. And the difference is significant, correct? In terms of...
Especially if it's a WooCommerce site and it's doing any crunching, so PHP 7 is 2 to 3 times faster than the old version. So that equates to roughly a 30% increase the overall website load speed.
That's huge.
Yeah. So, and it's, all of these changes are pretty much free. So, they're all kind of no-brainer things, but most people don't know about them. And, if you're focusing on Google PageSpeed Insights, it doesn't tell you any of these things. Like, it doesn't tell you about DNS speed, HTTP2 protocol, PHP 7, any of these things.
Yeah. So look, by now, there's a lot of people who are listening to this and going, wow, this is all fantastic information, and thank you for pointing this stuff out. Oh, my God, I don't want to do any of this myself. Or they may pass it on. If they've already got a web developer they're using, then they can speak to them. But again, we'll just refer to WP Speedfix.com, and Brendan can sort it out for you at a ridiculously low price.
Yeah. So we have there is a service, a done for you service, and then we also have a DIY guide that a lot of people buy for their web developer to walk through. So it's basically the process, step-by-step process that you can have your team walk through. And then, there's a couple of other things you would do. You'd compress the images on the site. So we use a plugin there's lots of image compression plugins. We use a plugin called WP Smush. It's free.
I like that, WP Smush.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And then there's general site maintenance stuff. Make sure all the plugins are up to date. Like, quite often people will be running really, really old plugins that are slow, so updating all the plugins. Disable anything you're not using. People quite often have 10 different plugins that are all doing similar things, and they'll have 2 sitemap plugins and all these landing page plugins that we just added to the site over the time, and nobody's maintained those. So we would go through and do an inventory of all the plugins you're using on this site. If you're not using it, get rid of it, and go through and do an inventory of all the remarketing and tracking codes and tools like that if you're not actively using it, then get rid of it. So
yeah, a tip there would be to use Google Tag Manager to keep all of your tracking codes and stuff in one place through just one plugin. Then you just update it in one central place, and it's not slowing down the site. Yep. So
exactly,
that's what we would say to do. That's cool. So, all All right. Now, do you offer? Because I know we do, but do you offer? Do you offer any ongoing maintenance, website maintenance, plugin updates, WordPress update service?
We do, but generally they need to be on our hosting. Like we have to have an ongoing relationship with them if they want that.
Yeah, fair enough. So if you aren't with Brendan and you want to get someone to manage it, we can do that for you at wpmaintenance.com.au. So check that out. We'll put a link there as well. It's a yearly cost for us to update your site with all the plugins and WordPress updates, etc., and security to make sure it is working correctly. So either way, between WP Speedfix and WP Maintenance, we have solutions that can help you get it sorted if you don't want to do it yourself. There are some people who will be listening to this who are very hands-on and they're familiar with WordPress and they feel confident, and they can even go to WP Speedfix and download the PDF and buy the process file that Brendan's offering, which will make it a lot easier for you to follow. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, you've got to pay attention to this stuff because it's very easy for it to get away from you, and then you've got a lot more time and cost to actually fix things that are broken than maintaining these things. So anything else to add before we finish up on this lovely technical WordPress version of our podcast?
No, that's really it. I mean, it's just, again, it comes back to if it's slow. If it feels slow, it probably is slow, and then it's probably hurting your overall marketing. So I'd say, good quality hosting, plug around the site from time to time, every couple of months, just, go through everything on your site, go through all the forms, make sure everything's working and it loads fast. It's probably the way to go. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it, I think.
Fantastic. Very good. Very, very good. So no excuses to have a slow, non-performing website that breaks anymore. All right. Now, for those who don't have WordPress websites, sorry, because what we were all talking about, to be very clear, was all about WordPress, if you didn't pick that up already. So if you have other platforms that you're using like Joomla or Drupal, etc., then you'll have to find someone else, because I know we don't deal with it. I don't think you do either, Brendan.
Yeah, the same principles would apply. So
feed,
images.
Yeah, absolutely. Same sort of principles. You may just end up having to find different plugins or different things to use within those platforms to achieve the same result. So you'll have to do some investigating, which I'm sure you'll be able to do on Google now that you've got some idea of what to ask. So awesome. Thank you for your time, Mr. B.
Cool. No worries. Catch you next time.
Until the next episode, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Cheers for now.
You've been listening to the Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com, on iTunes, SoundCloud and Stitcher.